Hello everybody, my name is Jack. I go by Jack in Action on GameFed, but I wanted to use my real name today because this is about a real issue, a sensitive issue to many people across the world. I'm going to be talking about domestic abuse. Before we go on, I want you to know that I personally am a victim of domestic abuse, which I'll get into in a second. I just wanted to let you know that we are going to be discussing issues of domestic abuse and showing graphic images from a game known as Detroit Become Human, which depicts domestic abuse, which some people may find offensive. Just so you know, I completely understand if you're not comfortable watching the video. If you do need support, I am here anytime to discuss that with you. When I was 17 years old, I left my home for the last time with a suitcase in my hand and a swollen face. Today, I am 26, and in September it will be 9 years since I made that decision to leave. Now, one might think with a game like this that I would be offended or upset that they're trying to cover the taboo issues of domestic abuse and who knows how many other taboo topics that are throughout the game. But I'm not, and I'm going to get into why, but simply put, I'm very angry. Because today, I learned that we gamers are facing the same problem that we faced 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Games are not art. Games are not a valid form of expression. Or in this case, domestic abuse is not a topic that games should cover. Ever. I am of course referring to Detroit Become Human, a game developed by Sony that is coming out this year. Its trailer was released a while back in October, but a petition has finally surfaced and reached my attention to get this game banned from Australian shores. Certain people from my country do not want this game at all. This is bullshit. Let's take a look at the trailer itself. Immediately, you see that you play as an android with a report for a young girl. The father of the girl immediately puts you to task, showing signs of being controlling and hostile. And we see through various options the game allows you to make choices to impact how the scene can play out as the father makes his way up the stairs with the intent of harming his daughter. This is significant in a number of ways, but more specifically for me, though almost certainly not intended, is that it's eerily similar to a process I studied growing up called forum theatre. In this style of theatre, you would play out an uncomfortable scene, e.g. a teenager being offered drugs, which he then accepts, which leads to him ODing and passing out, and his friend calling the ambulance. The scene would then stop, and the audience would be asked by the actors what they would have done differently. Then, if they're comfortable, they are offered to play out the scene themselves, trying to understand what it would be like to be put on the spot like that. Now, I don't sit here and pretend that that particular method is perfect in its execution or its potential to educate. It's not. The teenager may have complied to be on the stage themselves due to peer pressure not being entirely comfortable. They may be telling facilitators what they want to hear, or perhaps they simply cannot empathize with a clearly staged simulation like this. However, I still hold to the fact that it's one of the more effective forms of education and performance that I have studied in my time. This game, however, has the potential to be so much more than whatever exercise I could hope to devise. Anyone can pop Detroit Become Human on in a safe space of their choosing. As a victim of domestic abuse looking for closure, someone trying to empathize, or hell, someone just trying to pass the time in an enjoyable way playing a video game who gets a bit of pathos. I truly believe that this game can achieve this, and I can also tell you from what I've seen of the trailer that the behavior expressed was real life for me. Sudden outbursts from the father, yelling, random physical violence. None of it is trivialized. Which leads me to... all the links are in the description, and I'm not going to give undue credit in this video to these ridiculous claims, but one may think we're still in the console wars of Sega and Nintendo, where they're accusing each other of who's the worst influence for children, considering all the muck that's being thrown towards Sony and game director David Cage. Quote, "Violence against children is not entertainment. It's not a game. It's a real nightmare for thousands of children who have to live through these kind of scenarios. The makers of this game should be thoroughly ashamed. I think it's perverse. Who thinks beating a child is entertainment? Any video game that trivializes or normalizes child abuse, neglect, or domestic abuse for entertainment is unacceptable. It is completely wrong for domestic violence to be part of a video game regardless of what the motivation is. Domestic violence is not a game. I worry that people who play this, who themselves have suffered abuse, will use this game to shape the way in which they deal with abusers." It's dangerous to plant the seed in people's minds that the way to deal with abusers is to use violence against them. I call upon Sony Interactive Entertainment to think again and withdraw this game, or at least remove this scene where a virtual child is put in life-threatening danger. If you don't, real children may suffer. Now do me a favor, and imagine the comments that might come up if I took the aforementioned forum theater idea on the road, narrowed it down to deal with domestic abuse specifically, and still did everything else I talked about. Do you think there would be nearly as many complaints? Or complaints at all? Nope, I don't think so. Why? Because games still aren't being taken seriously. In fact, the journalists themselves admit as such. A quote that sticks with me is, director David Cage was defensive of the game's subject matter. When challenged about the trailer's grim brutality, he asked, "Would you ask this question to a film director or to a writer? Would you?" Cage's retort is rooted in the long-standing insecurity of game makers and players alike that video games are a lesser medium for creative expression, one that lacks the gravity to address taboos. Yaha. Guys, insecurity implies it's not a thing. When every article I've read in the title is making a pun of violence is it a game or trivializing certain issues, I think that might be a little bit more than paranoia on our parts. I think you guys are the one that's making us feel bad that we want games to be taken seriously. Trivializing certain issues? How exactly is the game doing that? By making the father a Machiavellian mustache-twirling villain? Nah, covered that. In the trailer, the father does real stuff that people in domestic abusive relationships do all the time. Is there a victim we can't relate to? I don't know enough about the little girl, but she seems sweet and caring from what we know. Android protagonist too left of center? Too hard to understand? Tell that to all of Blade Runner, one of the best works of the 20th century. See what I'm getting at? In the words of the bard, the game is the thing. And then there's the petition. I'm not linking to the petition because it's stupid, and I hate that 2,500 of my fellow Australians have signed it. Regardless, it's worth pointing out how far we still have to go as gamers to shake off this image of juvenility. Granted, there's nothing we can do about the loud minority, but those who have watched this far, thank you, and bear with me a little while longer. Because writing this hasn't made me feel better, folks. I'm hoping recording it will get it out of my system enough to allow me to take a breath. But God damn it! Remember when Australia fought so hard to get an R18 rating just to never deal with this bullshit again? Remember when we thought, aha, we've done it! Being taken seriously at last! Nope. Not even close. Because every time we try to have content that reflects the very dark world that we live in, and make no mistake, there was no good old days when it comes to this stuff, we get told video games are toys, and toys are for kids. Well, I'm sick of that shit. By your logic, movies and theaters are playing dress-ups, graphic novels are for fools who don't like to read big words, and all fictional books are flights of fancy. Well, I say bollocks to that, and I hope you do too. So, what's the solution? I don't really know, gang. But I will say, keep an eye on this game. If it even slightly looks like your cup of tea, give it a buy. It might disappoint us, but I'd rather have a well-meaning, high-reaching failure that tries to broaden our medium than some mediocre action franchise because some well-meaning gatekeepers tell us to stay in our lane. For once though, this isn't on us. It's on them. So, David Cage, Sony, keep doing what you're doing. I am a victim of domestic abuse, and I support you. Please don't let me down.